All right, good afternoon. Everybody all set? Good afternoon. My name is Bill Fitzpatrick. I am the Onondaga County elected DA, and I have been appointed special prosecutor by the Attorney General, Letitia James, to investigate the death of Messiah Nantwi, which, as you know, occurred on March 1st of this year. Today, an Oneida County grand jury reported out a single indictment charging 10 current and former corrections officers with various crimes relating to the death of Mr. Nantwi. 6 other corrections officers who have not appeared in court yet have agreed to cooperate with the special prosecutor, and I have made deals with them. 2 of them will be pleading to felonies, and 4 of them will be pleading to various misdemeanors. All defendants, even those that I've made deals with, are entitled to the presumption of innocence. An indictment is only an indictment. It's a set of allegations, and there's a lot of work yet to be done in this particular case. I'd like to summarize for you what is in the public record regarding the indictment as to the events of Saturday, March 1st of this year. As you all know, and as Commissioner Marticello is acutely aware, at that time there was a corrections officers strike going on. There was also an influx of National Guardsmen that were present at Midstate and several other correctional facilities throughout the state of New York. At approximately 10:55 a.m. that morning, the people are able to show that all was well in Building 21 where Mr. Nantwi resided. I know that because the corrections officer who was assigned to do rounds on that occasion walked past his room at approximately 10:55 a.m. and there was nothing going on. At about 10:58 a.m., a call went out over the radio at the facility calling for backup. The evidence will show that when the CERT team responded and got there at approximately 11 a.m., there was virtually no or minimal effort to determine what was the need for the backup, what the nature of the call was. No weapons were observed and no assaultive behavior was observed by the CERT team members as they entered Building 21. A non-CERT team member, a corrections officer, recorded the last video of Mr. Nantwi before the alleged assault, and he was no longer able to communicate. That corrections officer exited the room and various CERT team members entered. None of them, to our knowledge at this point, were wearing mandated body-worn cameras. Approximately 4.5 minutes later, Mr. Nantwi is removed from his room and taken down 3 sets of stairs where it is alleged by the grand jury that an additional assault occurred in the stairwell. Handcuffed and taken to the infirmary and laid on the floor in a holding cell, an additional assault is alleged to have occurred by the grand jury. Fragments of Mr. Nantwi's entrance into the infirmary are captured on one corrections officer's body-worn camera. It is not a continuing flow, but there are enough indications to name and identify the individuals involved and some of the things that occurred. Many other corrections officers, apparently intentionally, either turned off their cameras, placed them in an area of concealment, or simply looked the other way. Kunkel ambulance personnel responded to the infirmary following a call at 11:36 a.m. At approximately 11:47 a.m., and at that point detected no signs of life in Mr. Nantwi. It was determined by the Onondaga County medical examiner that Mr. Nantwi died from traumatic brain injuries as a result of violent blows to his head, as well as at least 69 other serious blows about his body. No COs required any medical intervention. I was appointed special prosecutor shortly after the incident and assisted by my own investigative team, officials from the Department of Corrections and Community Service, and the New York State Police. We began an investigation and wanted to assist the grand jury in answering the following questions. Who, if anyone, was justified in using physical force against Mr. Nantwi? 2, if initial force was justified, did it remain appropriate and proportionate to the danger presented, if any, throughout the encounter? And did it follow Doc's protocols? And third, were efforts made to thwart my investigation by deception, concealment, or destruction? The grand jury has answered those questions as follows. The first count charges two individuals, corrections officers Jonah Levy and Caleb Blair, with depraved mind murder. Not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved and so wanton and disregarding of human life that New York law allows it to rise to the level of intentional murder. They are charged based on their actions, not only in Mr. Nantwi's room, but also in the stairwell and in the infirmary. Secondly, the grand jury has returned charges of manslaughter in the first degree, intent to cause serious physical injury resulting in death. Those corrections officers are again Levi and Blair, and additionally Thomas Eck, Craig Klemek, and Daniel Berger. They are also charged with gang assault in the first degree, intent to cause serious physical injury, and doing so, a Class B violent felony. Same individuals, Levy, Blair, Eck, Klemek, and Berger. Gang assault in the second degree, intent to cause simply physical injury and resulting in serious physical injury. And this time, the same individuals, in addition to Sergeant Francis Chandler. Manslaughter in the second degree has been charged against Sergeants David Ferrone and Francis Chandler. The theory of prosecution on that count is that these two sergeants in a supervisory role in Mr. Nantwi's room did absolutely nothing to stop the beating that he was enduring and offered absolutely no assistance to him, completely contrary to Doc's protocols and guidelines. Then the grand jury began to focus on the cover-up, as amateurish and ineffective as it was. In the sixth count, David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, Jonah Levy, Caleb Blair, Thomas Eck, Nicholas Vital, Daniel Berger, and Craig Klemek are charged with conspiracy to offer a false instrument for filing. Docs has a form known as 2104A, which requires the individual corrections officer who was present, to indicate who was present at the scene, what force was used by the author of the report, and what force was witnessed by the author of the report. In addition to charging conspiracy, the grand jury must also allege overt acts. In this case, the overt acts alleged are, number one, that every single use of force reported by these individuals omitted two people, Sergeant Chandler and Corrections Officer Levi, and that was done intentionally. The second overt act, it is alleged that the reports were in fact filed and known to be false when they were filed. And the third overt act alleged is that on the following morning, at a diner called Raspberries in Oneida County, all of the co-conspirators met and agreed to continue with the story that everything they did was completely proper. David Ferrone, Francis Chandler, and Thomas Eck are also charged with conspiracy and conspiracy to tamper with physical evidence. These three individuals, along with others known to the grand jury, allegedly concocted a scheme to posthumously plant a weapon in Mr. Nantwi's room. The overt acts alleged in favor of that conspiracy, alleged overt act number one, is that the weapon itself was found earlier that day in a completely unrelated incident. The second overt act, a body-worn camera intentionally hung in a men's room at the infirmary of Midstate, caught two of the co-conspirators discussing the conspiracy to plant the weapon, again posthumously, on Mr. Nantwi. And the third overt act alleged is that defendant Chandler, actually in front of a group of all of the corrections officers, asked for a volunteer to have someone come forward and say that it was he that discovered the weapon. And it is alleged that that quote-unquote volunteer was Thomas Eck. Mr. Slauson, Corrections Officer Donald Slauson, is charged with tampering with physical evidence, and it is alleged that he had cleaned up the holding cell of all of Mr. Nantwi's blood over at the infirmary. And the final defendant is Sergeant Michael Eifert. He is charged, again, with offering a false instrument for filing, allegedly falsely asserting that he had no opportunity to look into the room and, in fact, saw no use of physical force against Mr. Nantwi. I want to thank the staff, my office. Probably 10% of my office has been involved in corrections officers allegedly committing homicides over the last 2 months. And I'm joined here with Senior Assistant DA Sarah Fitzpatrick and Senior Assistant DA Alphonse Williams, who have done an incredible job in helping me present this evidence to a grand jury. I also am joined here today by Ruben Lindo and the Reverend Kevin McCall, who are both individuals who have supported me throughout my endeavors in an effort to get justice, not only for Mr. Brooks, but for Mr. Nantwi as well. I don't believe that anybody from Mr. Nantwi's family is here. The only individual from his family that I've spoken to is through his attorney, his dad, and I understand that his dad is not in the greatest of physical shape and apparently was unable to travel here today. I also want to thank Troopers Tim Doherty, Bill Casey, Tom Quilter, Denny Doherty, Andy Wilmot, and if I may reserve a special spot for Olivia Tabor, who have been just incredible in helping me present this case. In addition to the work done by my office, as I mentioned, DOCS has been unbelievably supportive. Every single thing I have asked of them, they have gotten for me. I mentioned Chris Marticello last time I was here. I now want to turn the microphone over to the Commissioner of DOCS, Daniel Marticello, for his comments. Dan?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to first start with offering my sincerest condolences to the Nantwi family. The murder of Messiah is really a senseless act that no family should have to ever experience or endure. In response to this incident, I immediately deployed my Office of Special Investigations, as well as made immediate referrals to the New York State Police and the Attorney General's office, who quickly identified District Attorney Fitzpatrick's office to take over as a special prosecutor to make sure that we're keeping people accountable for any wrongdoing that may have occurred. After what occurred at Marcy back in December, I vowed that I would not allow violence to become normalized within the system, and I'm committed to this goal, and that has been unwavering. Both my executive leadership team and I are continuing to work with the internal and external stakeholders to ensure that we assess our culture and determine areas that we can improve. The people entrusted to our care deserve better than this, and I'm committed to impactful change to an end the violence within the system, both for incarcerated and staff alike. The bottom line is we must do better to change our culture and the way we approach this work. I strongly condemn the behavior of those staff members involved in the murder of Mr. Nantwi, as well as making sure that we hold them accountable to the highest standards of public safety. And today, this is one step forward in making sure that we bring justice to him and his family. I'm committed as we move forward to structural and cultural change that ensures the basic dignity and rights and respect of all people, whether they're incarcerated or working in the system. There's no place for violence in the correctional system, regardless of who perpetrates the crime or the violence inside of our institutions. I want to take the opportunity to thank the Superintendent of State Police, his staff, the District Attorney, and members of his staff for their commitment to ongoing public safety and for starting to bring justice in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm not sure what number superintendent I'm on in my 40-year career as a prosecutor. I think it's up there, but I don't know of, that I could point to one that I've had a better working relationship with than the current one. And I also want to again publicly thank him for the assistance that I've gotten from the New York State Police And as a former president of the National DA's Association who has traveled all over this country, I can tell you that I don't know of a state police agency that is more accomplished and more qualified than this one. And a lot of it has to do with Superintendent Stephen James, who'd like to say a few words. Soup.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm being called, so excuse me. The boss at home. Good afternoon. Thank you, Dave Fitzpatrick. Today, the New York State Police, certainly in coordination with the Onondaga County District Attorney's Office, under the authority of the grand jury, there's been criminal action taken in connection with the death of 22-year-old Messiah Nantwi, as part and parcel of why we're here to discuss. As of this afternoon, New York State correctional officers have been indicted and they have surrendered themselves to the state police for processing. Now, these arrests, without a doubt, they follow an intensive investigation by members of the state police, of which I'm thoroughly proud of the work that they've done. The Bureau of Criminal Investigation, a forensic identification unit, and other specialized teams. Their work, without a doubt, was instrumental in bringing this case together. Since this incident has occurred back on March 1st at the Mid-State Correctional Facility, our investigators, they've worked tirelessly. They've uncovered facts to determine the truth with regard to what happened inside the walls of the correctional facility. While certainly I'm limited in what I can convey regarding the specifics as far as the details of the case, because the matters are before the court, and certainly as the special prosecutor knows, but I want to make one thing absolutely clear. No one should operate or is expected to be above the law. That's whether you're a citizen, that's whether you're a police officer, or whether you're a corrections officer. That is of particular note. The evidence presented to the grand jury, it suggests that there was a gross abuse of authority that took place. And I lay it out as an abuse that has led to the loss of a man's life. Obviously, that's not acceptable, and it obviously wasn't tolerated. Our role in law enforcement is not just to enforce the laws, but to protect the public in general. That means investigating criminal acts wherever they occur and wherever they may happen, whether in the city streets or behind the walls of correctional facilities. I want to thank District Attorney Fitzpatrick, certainly for your continued leadership and your commitment as a special prosecutor in this case, as well as the separate but equally serious case involving Robert Brooks at the Marcy Correctional Facility. And I'd like to say to the people of the state of New York, law enforcement specifically, I speak for the state police, we're here to serve you. We are here to answer to you, and we're here to support you. Because we know trust, it exists only if there is a mutual understanding and if we uphold aspects of the law and are impartial. And that's what we intend to uphold. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. Glad to take any questions that I'm allowed to answer, or anybody else standing up here. Sir.
Could I ask a question for the Commissioner? It has to do with the body cam policy. We were here in February, and Mr. Miller was talking about how the new rules on body cameras, fixed position cameras, would be very effective. And yet, sadly, within a month, we had this. Is this a factor of COs not following the procedure? Does the procedure have to be revisited? How could this happen with the inaction of the new body cam policy?
Yeah, so after the incident with Mr. Brooks in December, I enacted a statewide policy that a facility that had facility-wide body cameras, that they'll be on at all times while individuals are on duty. Some facilities are not fully operational at this time where only supervisors have them, but at the Mid-State Correctional Facility, they are fully deployed. So clearly staff were acting outside of the policy, which you heard the DA speak about the violating both DOC's policies as well as their oath of office. So we continue, when we find those instances, to discipline staff under the collective bargaining agreement to make sure we drive that message home. The policy is not, please do it. It's our policy. This is what you must do or be subject to discipline. And in this case, obviously, it led to criminal behavior, which was uncovered by the district attorney.
There's an interaction
Yeah, so correct. The body camera must be powered on at all times, and then when they're interacting with an incarcerated person, it must be activated to capture that event.
Commissioner, you said that you made that vow to end violence in the prison system after Robert Brooks. Of course, Mr. Nantwi is allegedly murdered after Robert Brooks. What changes will now be made to ensure we aren't standing here again in a month?
Yeah, so when we began down the road of really doing a culture assessment after the Robert Brooks case, we hired external law firms to conduct a full review of the system, which is currently underway. They're looking at our policies, our procedures, our training, how we're training correction officers in the academy as well as in service, and then also looking at the culture of our facilities to make recommendations to my office. That review continues, and as a result of this more recent incident, we've expanded that scope to include a review of Mid-State Correctional Facility as well. And again, we will be making a public report once that is available, and I'm committed to making the changes that are necessary. I've long said that people come to prison as punishment, not for punishment, and our job while they're with us is to give them the services and the access to academics and programming to allow them to be better versions of themselves and to go home to their community and their families, which clearly we failed in this opportunity.
Commissioner, how can 30 officers between two prisons so close have such similar intent?
Well, again, the criminal process will play out, and our independent review, whatever it reveals, we will make sure we uncover every stone and make any changes that are necessary to make sure that we are driving home that this is not the type of behavior that we expect from people that are sworn members or civilian members that work for the department. It's just uncalled for, and I won't tolerate it.
How much of a role did the strikes play in this, given that it seems like in the indictments this started with a National Guardsman incorrectly broadcasting something over the radio?
Yeah, I mean, clearly we were in the midst of a strike, unprecedented. There hadn't been a strike in 46 years in the corrections department. So, I mean, obviously that it had a tremendous impact. The direct correlation to what it played in this particular incident, I'm not going to opine as we continue forward with the criminal charges.
Commissioner, question.
Do you think that there is a systemic and deeper problem with the abuse and accountability inside the prison?
Well, after I watched the videos in the Robert Brooks case, as well as this incident that we're talking about here today that led to the murder of a second individual, from my perspective, I need to question everything going on, right? Which is why we brought in somebody independent to conduct a review, because I want to make sure that if we do have any patterns or cultures, that we get to the heart of the issue and make those necessary changes, because that's not who we are as a department. It's certainly not who we are as a state. And moving forward, we need to make sure that we make the necessary changes, that this doesn't happen again.
Commissioner J.B. Nicholas, question. Has any of the guards allegedly killed Robert Brooks? Have they been fired by the department yet?
There have been a number of them that have resigned. We do have arbitration hearings that are scheduled in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements, but they've all been suspended, and we are seeking their termination, similar to in this case as well.
And you talked about changing the culture before, but I spoke with several correction officers who've been through, they've all been through the department's academy, and they say that in the academy they're actually trained to hate inmates. Is that true, and what's your response?
No, I don't find that to be the case. I've reviewed the curriculum, and actually, as of recently, I've had a formerly incarcerated person address the academy class to show what success looks like and the impact that they have on people's lives. Oftentimes it's forgotten the work of corrections and the important impact it has on the continuum of public safety. But if we do our job right and they go back to society, we avoid future victimization, future crimes, and they become tax-paying citizens, giving back to their communities and playing important roles.
I understand what you're saying about sometimes that corrections officers can actually sort of like reach a guy, so to speak, in some situations. I've heard corrections officers express that. I've heard prisoners express that, that it happens once in a while. Guards seem to think that cameras will impede that ability to sort of like reach people. You know what I mean? Because they'll always be on camera. And guards are afraid that they'll be disciplined for maybe speaking the wrong way or things like that. Is there any consideration in that? Like, what's your response to that?
Yeah, so I mean, first of all, I think that correctional officers play an important role in the rehabilitative process, particularly this day and age, partnering with program staff and our teachers and what have you. In terms of the body cameras, I see no evidence of that. And I've heard those anecdotal claims, well, we're going to be disciplined because we speak ill of the commissioner or we speak ill of the superintendent. I haven't disciplined any person that is letting off steam talking about their supervisory staff or anything of that nature. If they're engaging in misconduct, then absolutely we'll discipline them and hold them accountable. But for those ancillary conversations that happen to be caught on body camera, we haven't been able to point to one instance where that's occurred.
Is the strike to blame for the death?
Again, I don't know that there's a direct correlation, but certainly we were under tremendous stress dealing with the strike with almost 10,000 correction officers and sergeants that had walked out to participate in an illegal job action.
Commissioner, were there any red flags or prior complaints against any of the officers involved in Mr. Nantwi's death? And if so, why were they still on duty?
Yeah, so again, we have we've conducted investigations when there's allegations, and when we find wrongdoing, we do go through the disciplinary process through the collective bargaining agreement. In terms of specifics on each individual, I can't recite them here today, and to the extent that may be information for the jury to consider in the judicial process, I'm not going to comment any further.
How many of the defendants were on the search?
I don't know off the top of my head exactly how many the total number is.
D.A. Fitzpatrick, you detail almost like a bad Hollywood attempt at a cover-up. Meeting at a diner, planning of a knife. I just wonder what you make of that and what that says about the attempt.
Well, what I initially make of it, Andrew, is it's criminal conduct. I hope to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury several months from now. But what I will say, and again, this is an impression that I have, is that, you know, some of the people that we interviewed who are cooperators admitted to this two conspiracies: one, the planting of the shank, and two, the falsifying the reports. And when being a prosecutor, I want to prove things with facts and statements and eyewitnesses, and they kind of looked at me and said, well, it was kind of understood that we do it that way. I mean, that's not good enough for a jury, and I'll present more proof than that. But that to me is problematic. Before the next question, I just want to acknowledge my colleague from Oneida County, the Oneida County District Attorney Todd Carville, who's in the room. Todd has been very much of an assist to me in my coming to Oneida County. And he's also working on things that I won't comment on outside of my jurisdiction that I think will be helpful to me.
DA, with the Robert Brooks case, everyone was able to see the nauseating video that was released by the Attorney General. In this case, not a lot of camera footage. So what is the primary evidence that you have of the beatings in 3 different locations? And can you speak to the brutality of the fact that this began, as you described it, seemingly unprovoked and continued for a length of time?
Well, to answer the latter question first, the indictment speaks for itself in terms of the severity of what the grand jury thought of it by charging 2 individuals with murder. And again, not an intentional murder, but a murder so depraved that it rises to the level of intentional murder. And in terms of the proof that I have, I'll limit myself to what's in the indictment. The indictment alleges that the victim here, Mr. Nantwi, was beaten with fists, with batons, and with boots. And medical examiner testified about massive head injuries. I think one way of analogizing it is, Mike Tyson went through an entire career as a boxer, and no one ever killed him, and he never killed anyone. And his job was to hit people in the head and inflict injury upon them. So that should give you some idea of the severity of these alleged injuries.
Do you know how, and did you offer a theory, and apologies if I missed this, as to how it went that morning from basically everything's fine at 10:55 to deadly chaos within like 3 minutes? Like, what brought the men accused of beating him to death into contact with you in the first place?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I want to kind of clarify that because I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that I'm blaming the National Guardsmen. Nothing could be farther from the truth. What the grand jury is suggesting is that this is something that spiraled out of control unnecessarily. The alleged contact that began between the National Guard and Mr. Nantwi had to do with Mr. Nantwi interjecting himself in another incarcerated individual's effort to obtain medication. The National Guardsmen did not appreciate that. They indicated that to him. And then further testimony has indicated that Mr. Nantwi oftentimes had problem with what's known as count. Count being a systemic operation where corrections officers want the incarcerated individuals in their room, and as the name suggests, they would then do a physical head count of the people. Mr. Nantwi was initially a little resistant to that. After the call went out, and before the CERT team got there, that situation had resolved itself by the intervention of Mr. Nantwi's roommate, another incarcerated individual. Obviously, it could not have taken him a long period of time. If the call went out at 10:58 and Mr. Nantwi was in his room compliant at 11 o'clock. But again, those are things that the trial jury will hear in this case. Somebody had.
You're not blaming the National
Yeah,
Guard.
one second. Hold.
Of the two conspiracies, you mentioned that they planned them. Did they actually try to carry through planting the knife and submitting the report, or they just?
They went so far as to file reports about that, as alleged in the indictment. In terms of physically presenting at a proceeding, that's not a necessary element of the crime. It only has to be a prospective proceeding. They never got that far for obvious reasons. Question.
So you say you're not blaming National Guard members.
Right.
But they make a call without explaining why they're making the call.
Right.
And the situation resolved. No National Guard members said, hey, everything's fine. Messiah's in the cell, everything's okay.
There's video of the CERT team coming onto Mr. Nantwi's floor and having probably a 3-second interaction with 3 National Guardsmen. And it's difficult to hear exactly what is said, but it's basically misbehaving. No specifics, nothing like that. There's a difference between explaining what happened, suggesting that it may have happened otherwise, and blaming somebody. I am not in the latter category. I'm not blaming the National Guardsmen. They were put into an impossible situation by an illegal strike. They did the very, very best they could. No one's charging them with any type of abuse of the inmates. I don't think there's been an incident, Dan will correct me, regarding a National Guards person abusing an inmate. So I'm not blaming them. I'm simply trying to give you information to understand how the sequence occurred.
Dear Fitzpatrick, I was here for the last press conference for Brooks.
Yeah, me too.
And I asked you a question about whether you thought that Brooks's alleged murder was indicative of a systemic problem in the Department of Corrections, and you said no. And now here we are 2 months later with another murder, alleged murder, indicted by you across the street from Marcy. And I just heard you say that in response to a question from one of my colleagues, that the cover-up in the diner, it was what he said was, this is just how we do it. And you said that was problematic for you. So let me ask you again, do you see a systemic problem with rogue prison guards in the system based on your investigations?
I don't think any rational prosecutor could stand in front of you for the second time in 6 weeks talking about cases that have remarkable similarities and say to you that everything is fine. Okay? People in law enforcement justifiably have a tendency to defend themselves. Wrongful convictions. Oh, we never get it wrong. We never prosecute the wrong guy. And yet historically we know that there have been hundreds of people who have been misidentified, had evidence planted against them, and so forth and so on. Is that a systemic problem nationally amongst prosecutors? I would suggest to you that it's not, based on the amount of prosecutions that occur and the number of wrongful convictions that are discovered. I would also say to you that it is a problem, and there is a problem. I think the commissioner addressed that in his remarks, and I don't mean to presume that I'm now, 3 months into this, an expert on correctional facilities. I'm not. I don't pretend to be. But I do have some thoughts and ideas that I'm not going to share with everybody now that I'd like to share with Dan and the governor at some point in the future.
Bill, at the Robert Brooks press conference, you specifically mentioned he seemed to do nothing in his case to bring this on. In your indictment here, it does mention that Nantwi perhaps grabbed the vest of an officer and perhaps a bit
Correct.
How do you, can you describe his actions against the officers and perhaps what should have been the response?
Well, I'm not going to talk about what should have been the response, but if, 7, 8 CERT officers go into a room, I don't think it's unreasonable for a civilized society to expect that the inmate comes out alive. And in this case, that didn't happen. The biting was through a glove. There was no medical attention given to that. I'm sure this will be something, Andrew, that will be discussed at length at trial. You do not have the right as an incarcerated individual to bite a corrections officer. You don't have a right to grab their vest. But is the response proportional? Is it within protocols? Is it within guidelines? Part of the DOC's guidelines have to do with de-escalation. What was done in this case to de-escalate a situation that the grand jury has alleged nobody even knew what the hell was?
Question for the commissioner. Sorry, just for the microphone.
That's good.
As we look at this case and the attempted cover-up being described, I can say I'm sure that my colleagues who also work in local newsrooms get a ton of calls, a ton of emails, especially as the strikes came on, with people alleging that they got beat, they were hit, but were able to walk away from it. So often, officers are able to keep their jobs, otherwise avoid legal action if those allegations are true. Given what's happened here, given what's happened with Brooks, will docs be reopening investigations into any other cases where officers might have gotten away with it?
Yeah, if there's evidence to reopen a case and or allegations against staff, we open cases and we make sure that we investigate those to the fullest. With the governor's investment of millions of dollars in fixed cameras and now body cameras, I think that that'll make our job easier with making sure we get to the heart of the issue and making sure that we have the facts of each case. That way we can pursue it either criminally if it rises to that level and or administratively under the terms of the collective bargaining agreement.
Will the superintendent mid-state keep their job?
That's something we'll be talking about internally. I'm not going to opine on that at this point.
Commissioner, the morale in your prisons weren't good during the strike, understandably. They can't be good now, seeing their coworkers be indicted now twice, 2 groups. I just wonder, what new efforts are you taking to make sure that people that show up to work every day feel safe, feel appreciated, and can effectively do their jobs?
Yeah. First, I mean, obviously the strike, right? Obviously that put a lot of strain on those that stayed, those that left and came back, and then with the number of staff that are terminated. So we're working closely to work on safety initiatives as outlined in the memorandum of agreement. But in terms of the morale as it pertains to this particular incident or the Robert Brooks case, I think the vast majority of correction officers that this conduct sickens them when they see what was on videotape in the Robert Brooks case and what they'll hear about as a result of this indictment. I don't think that this is what, when they look in the mirror, who they see. So I don't know that this in particular is going to drive their overall morale of themselves, but put a black eye on the agency as a whole. So I think, we'll continue to work cooperatively with our workforce, an aggressive recruitment campaign to attract the next generation of correctional professionals, as well as we work on the safety issues that they've identified.
Post-strike, do you feel adequately staffed?
Oh, right now we are definitely have a high vacancy rate of correction officers, which is why we've launched an aggressive recruitment campaign. The governor in the budget has recommended that we lift the residency requirements. We've gone under contract with a corrections-based recruitment firm to bring more staff to the table. And we have seen an increase of interest in people applying for and taking the examination.
Is it a problem today?
Say what?
Is it a problem today, the staff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a national shortage in correctional workforce across the nation. Prior to the strike, we were certainly not immune to that. And post-strike, we are certainly dealing with staffing, which is why the National Guard stays in place, and we'll be forever grateful for their service and them helping us through this trying time.
Just to follow up to what something you said before about additional resources. So since Brooks' alleged murder, I think the governor said she would commit additional millions to the department to upgrade the security features. How many internal OSI investigators have been hired since Brooks' death?
We're actually out actively recruiting and expanding OSI. We've reconfigured a new division for the Public Integrity Division, merging our internal investigations and our sex crimes unit into public integrity, and we've posted over 100 jobs, which we received over 600 resumes, and we're actively interviewing for those individuals. And these are people that are external to the department.
Has any reassurance been offered to prisoners right now, incarcerated individuals, after these two events to ensure them that this is, as you guys say, not the norm, and just anything that's been done on incarcerated individuals' rights?
Yeah, sure. So I routinely talk to incarcerated individuals across the state, whether it's issuing a memorandum or sending out notices through their tablet technology, or when I'm in facilities. Since the beginning of the strike, I've been in 24 different facilities talking with both staff and incarcerated, and I've directly addressed not only the Mr. Brooks murder, but the murder of Mr. Nantwi with the population, and we've had ongoing discussions relative to that and answered their questions.
Just want to ask Ruben or Reverend, if you'd like to address.
Thank you. I want to thank, sure, Ruben Lindo, also a community activist, worked closely with the Special Prosecutor's Office. One of the things that has come up, I was here a few months ago for the Robert Brooks, and I've spoken to Robert Jr. and his father. But the key in this situation that I think is overlooked, and we've said this, and I've written several white papers in the last 3 months, and I'll share them with the media. If you get with me afterwards, I'll send them to you. And in my white papers, I discovered that there was not a culture of violence within the Department of Corrections, but perhaps a character issue. And I can only say that because we're here again, about 2 months after, right? So it's very difficult when you work with the community like I do, you work with law enforcement like I do globally. I work with law enforcement, and we are working very hard to create what we call the bridge of transparency. And I've talked to Commissioner Marticello's office extensively. The key tenet to safety in all of these facilities is transparency. And that's what we're hoping to get today. That's what we've gotten from both Commissioner and Special Prosecutor have promised the community. Those out there in the community, I urge you to allow the wheels of justice to do what justice does, and let's let justice be served for the two individuals that lost their lives senselessly. Thank you.
Last question. Go ahead.
Which came first, the biting or the beating of the inmate?
The grand jury has alleged that the biting was well after the assault had started. Not to be rude, but next time I talk to you will be after a verdict in the Brooks case. I don't comment. If you call my office and ask me about a ministerial thing such as a time or place or something, I will absolutely respond to that. But I will not take any questions from now until verdict regarding my thoughts or who I'm calling as a witness or anything like that. I thank the people of Oneida County, starting with their county executive, Anthony Pacenti, for your hospitality. I hope I'm not here in a month addressing you again on another instance, and I don't think I could have said it better than Ruben. Let's give the wheels of justice an opportunity to work, and let's let Commissioner Marticello get to work and fix this problem. Thank you all.
Very clearly for all of us, did all the defendants make bail?
I think that I saw them all sign bail bonds, so I believe they all made bonds.
Did any of the Brooks defendants take the deals that you offered? Did any of them?
Nobody's pled guilty to anything regarding the Brooks case.
Are there dates set for those guilty plea deals?
No.
Thank you.
Sir, DA, sorry, is that the raspberries in New Hartford, or is there a different machine? There's two around here.
See what I got to put up with?
There's two?